featuring Concordia's partners, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, and Kennedy Odede from Shoko. Kennedy is one of our individual members. And so we're really happy to be a platform and a host to be bringing these two parties together to talk about a critical issue, water, sanitation, and hygiene, or WASH, and how it's important for global poverty alleviation. Throughout today's discussion and other webinars held in this series, Concordia has been teasing out applied best practices and informing a forthcoming resource on designing accelerated partnerships. And this is part of our commitment as an organization to strengthening the partnering ecosystem and supporting cross-sector collaboration around pressing global issues. So today we'll hear about MCC's work related to WASH in the African countries it works in, but also how it relies on public and private partnerships to be successful in its long-term strategy. The conversation will contribute to a larger set of programming related to WASH at the upcoming annual summit, as well as Concordia's regional programming in Latin America and Africa, which Ambassador Dobriansky, who's also on the line, and partners are working with Concordia on. Before I introduce Ambassador Dobriansky, I want to just kind of do the necessary Zoom housekeeping bits. As everybody's coming on, we're so happy to have you. You will be muted with your video blocked for the moment, but we will at the end of the discussion really open it up for more of a dialogue. In the interim, please introduce yourself in the chat feature. We want to know who you are, what organization you're with, where you're coming from, and even what you're doing with regards to WASH. If you have resources, anything like that, use that chat feature. Let's make sure that this is really a space where people are collaborating and coming together. We'll have a Q&A feature at the very end of the discussion, so make sure you have your questions for Sean and Kennedy ready. This will actually be not part of the recorded piece. So all of this is recorded and available post-event, but we will keep the Q&A piece special just for you all, people joining, our members who are joining us today. And then, yeah, I think everyone right now is a Zoom expert, so I won't go into the nitty-gritty, but if you do have any questions, use that chat feature and connect directly with the Concordia team or with the speakers. It's my pleasure now to turn over to Ambassador Dobriansky, who holds a 20-plus-year career in U.S. public service, culminating in the position of Undersecretary of State for Global Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. As in this role and others that she's held, she led U.S. policy addressing many of the issues that will be discussed today. She's a senior fellow at the Harvard University Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs and a member of Concordia's Leadership Council. Ambassador Dobriansky, would you please start us off with some framing remarks?
Right. Thank you so much, Hannah, and also thanks to Concordia for bringing us all together, and just delighted that we're all here this afternoon. And I also want to especially thank our distinguished speakers who we're going to hear from in just a moment. As Hannah indicated, I'm only going to give just a few minutes of framing remarks. Before we turn to the interview, let me say a few words about WASH, water, sanitation, hygiene. The United Nations has explicitly recognized access to clean drinking water and sanitation as an essential human right. In fact, there are many of you who know that the UN Sustainable Development Goal number 6 actually calls for clean and accessible water for all as an essential component of human life. Well, I will have to say that COVID-19, the pandemic, has especially put a big spotlight on the critical importance of sanitation, hygiene, and adequate access to clean water for preventing and also containing diseases. Do you know that billions of people, especially in rural areas, still lack safe water? In fact, the United Nations has said that 1 in 3 people do not have access to clean drinking water. The uncontrolled global spread of the deadly coronavirus from large cities to rural communities has truly awakened many developed nations to the public health challenges that are regularly faced by struggling populations in every corner of, for example, the African continent and elsewhere throughout the developing world. And our speakers are especially going to be homing in on that fact. The pandemic is also a stark reminder that essential supplies and services in healthcare facilities are among the most effective means, by the way, to forestall disease, protecting patients and also healthcare providers alike. And in particular, water, sanitation, and hygiene are the very bedrock of efficient healthcare environments. And yet, recent UN studies found that nearly 2 billion people, let me say that again, 2 billion people have to rely on healthcare facilities that lack basic water services. Now, I'm only focusing in on one component of WASH, and that's WASH in healthcare facilities. But how tragic indeed, 2 billion people who have to rely on healthcare facilities, hospitals, clinics that lack basic water services. So nearly 50% of healthcare facilities in least developed countries lack basic water and hygiene services, and nearly 25% lack any sanitation services. Recognizing these appalling conditions throughout the developing world, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres issued an historic global call to action on essential WASH in healthcare facilities in March of 2018. And this resulted in a resolution that was unanimously adopted by the 72nd convening of the World Health Assembly. So now, in the face of the current pandemic, the UN Secretary General's call to action has never been more relevant and urgent. Uncertainty regarding the spread of coronavirus is high, and its impact is especially high, and we're concerned particularly in Africa. Now, since its inception, the Millennium in 2004, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, MCC, has worked very vigorously alongside developing countries to promote economic growth, reduce poverty, and strengthen institutions within developing countries. And today we're going to be hearing very specifically about the work and the contributions that are being made through MCC, an invaluable institution, contributions that are being made to this crucial area of WASH. MCC has invested heavily and over the last few years within the African continent in particular, working alongside a number of countries, Jordan, Mozambique, Cape Verde, and also Tanzania. It's also played a very pivotal role in improving access to safe water and sanitation supplies in underserved communities. And I was very struck by the fact that MCC has declared 2020 as the year of WASH. I don't want to steal more of Sean Carnecross's thunder here, but let me go ahead and introduce him and also our moderator. So Sean Carnecross is the CEO of the Millennium Challenge Corporation. He was also served as Deputy Assistant to the President, and he was Senior Advisor to the White House Chief of Staff. And we're really delighted that you're here this afternoon. And our moderator of the interview program is Dr. Kennedy Odede, who is founder and CEO of Shining Hope for Communities, which is dedicated toward poverty alleviation, especially in Kenya, but he also has a broader view. And let me add, he's also a New York Times best-selling author. So without further ado, let me turn it over to you, Kennedy, and just thank you both for being here today. We are really delighted to have you, and no less, all of our participants this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. You gave us a very good 360 view of what's happening, and I'm also happy that you brought in the coronavirus and the impact of WASH, why it is important. So thanks so much for sharing that with us. And I love to hear that WASH is water is mostly a human right, is a basic need. So it's important for that. So Sean, good to see you.
Good to see you.
As Ambassador talked about, you declared 2020 the year of WASH. I'm really curious. Did you knew there would be coronavirus or this big? So I want to hear this about you. Tell me about that. The year 2020.
Yeah, sure. First, I want to make sure to thank Hannah and Concordia for hosting this event. I want to thank you for moderating, and thank you for everyone who's joining on the line. This is an agency that I believe is very impactful. I believe it's got the best staff in government, and more people ought to know what we're doing. So this is a very helpful format. Thank you. Yeah, so with respect to 2020 being the year of WASH, no, we did not predict a global pandemic. And what we did do, however, and what we do in our projects and the way that we assess what the needs are trying to identify those things that are core constraints on a country's economy, and then take a long-term view on sustainable ways to have maximum impact in resolving those. Because MCC, as you know, and I'll just give a little 101 in case folks on the line need an overview. What we are designed to do is a single focus: reduce poverty through economic growth. And we work with the best governed poorest nations in the world. We identify those through objective criteria, and then we start a data-driven, country-led approach to identifying what those constraints on an economy are, and projects that can be concretely designed to resolve them, both on the hard infrastructure side and on the policy and institutional reform side as well. And then once we enter into an agreement with that partner country, we have a 5-year clock. We've got to finish on time and on budget. So we are an incentive-based agency through and through. We depend on data, accountability, and transparency to get our job done. And that's how we wind up talking about WASH, because at the end of that, we've found that those programs have an enormous amount of impact. And the Corona, just to wrap up a long answer to your question, but the Corona pandemic really highlights and underscores the importance of those WASH programs moving forward.
Thanks so much, Sean. I'm really impressed how you took the year 2020 as the year of WASH. And as someone who grew up in a slum in Kibera, Kenya, WASH is very important. You know, so I'm glad that it's something that MCC takes seriously. So please, Sean, tell us more about these African countries you're working in, and what are the challenges you are facing? I also want to hear about some of the success in those countries.
Yeah, well, the first thing I'd say is, well, we're a global agency, but 3/4 of our portfolio is in Africa. And so that's exactly right. That's the overwhelming majority of our projects are in Africa. And because of the design of the agency, we inherently work with in challenging environments. It's literally the agency's middle name. And what we look for are places on our selection and eligibility criteria where governments are trying to be responsive to their people. And one of the ways that we think, and one of the things about MCC that we think is so important is, in order for trust to exist between a population and its government, a government has to deliver on the basic services and needs of its people. And so we help facilitate that enabling environment by identifying things like water, sanitation, hygiene, power, transport, things that are the basic needs of a society, and really build in projects that are sustained through institutions and design where we know it's going to be monitored, it's going to be evaluated, and they'll be lasting to grow the economy of the country and better the society of that country.
Thank you, Sean. As you say that government is very critical on this. So this brings me back to the role of MCC partners, and how do you work with community organizations and at the same time civil societies? So tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, and this gets to the second half of your question that I didn't answer. Sorry, but so what I would say is we've had great successes as well in Africa, and part of that is that country-led model. And in identifying the core constraints on an economy, what we do is we have a team of economists and analysts that engage with our partner countries, and they have a team that engages with us, and we meet with civil society groups. We meet with the stakeholders in our project. If we're talking about land reform, we're meeting with people whose farms are affected, whose land are affected, whose lives will be affected by it. If we're talking about the business environment, we're meeting with local stakeholders and small and medium enterprise owners. We're meeting with, in particular, women's organizations in country to understand gender inequity and ways that we can target and focus on that. And what that ensures is that our project has buy-in, and it has the support of the population that it's trying to help, that there's a level of trust there. And let me give one anecdote. When I was visiting Malawi, and Malawi, we finished a compact in Malawi. It was a hydropower project. And we're in development on a second compact in Malawi. And one of the parts of the first compact was to ensure that the state power utility, which did not hire women at all, had a gender unit included in the utility. They not only now hire women, but sponsor scholarships for women to become engineers, or STEM scholarships. And one of the women that I was talking to on the ground, a woman named Grace Gambi, is an engineer. Based on that scholarship, she's returned to Malawi. She wants to come back to Malawi to work on MCC's second compact. She started a women's education group where she has several thousand women that she's educating on sanitation and health, on literacy. And that, I think, I just think it's such a positive example of the agency and our country's power to inspire people and change and progress.
That's very powerful. How you're also investing on women is very, very important. And I just love how you talk about working with the government and also community organization, because we also need the government in Africa for something to be sustainable. You know what I mean? So it's very good how the agency is able to balance this. So I'm really impressed. Thank you so much. The next one is I want to talk about what is the MCC WASH work impact health facilities?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. First, just with the WASH programs generally, we've had great success in Jordan, in Mozambique, in Cabo Verde, in Tanzania, and in Zambia. We have, with respect to health, it has a direct impact. So in Zambia, the capital of Lusaka experiences rain. There's flooding. This leads to a problem because trash removal was lacking, which is a sanitation issue, which leads directly to a public health issue. And so we improved the drainage. MCC came in and improved the drainage infrastructure and increased access to the water supply. And by our calculation, over 20 years, that will benefit 1.2 million individuals in Zambia. In Mozambique, in Nampula and Nacala, the water infrastructure had degraded. It was poorly maintained. And so this led to a wastewater treatment problem, which led to disease. We renovated the wastewater treatment and drainage works, and that's had obvious health benefits. In Cabo Verde, which is an extremely water scarce country, we found that the constraints were really institutional. And so we helped establish a sound, financial, open and transparent institution to help on the water delivery side of things. So we've had, those are examples of successes that we've had on the health side that WASH indirectly impacts. And then with respect to health services themselves, we do engage directly in that. In Lesotho, we've rehabilitated 138 health centers and 14 outpatient departments, which may not sound like much, but it does compromise 90% of those facilities in Lesotho. There's a national reference lab and a blood transfusion services that we have sponsored as well, along with technical assistance. And we're engaged in a second compact there now, and a large portion of that, $40 million of that, is going to go toward improving health service delivery. So that's a direct impact. WASH obviously has an indirect and direct impact on health. And those projects, we get to them through the data and through the country-led process that we engage in on the front end of project design.
Wow, Sean. Is there any plan to come to East Africa?
Yeah, well, so at one point I was in East Africa. One of the things that we did, I think it's very important. We've been heavily concentrated in West Africa for some time now, but our board in December approved a new threshold program in Kenya, your home, and a compact in Mozambique. So we are back in East Africa. We're in Lesotho. We're in Malawi. We're engaged in Ethiopia in a threshold program. I think it's an important thing. I think it's vital that MCC has a strong presence in East Africa. I'm excited that we're returning there, and we had a wonderful visit in. Gosh, it seems like forever ago now, but it was in January to both Kenya and Mozambique, and they're going to be strong partners.
Wow, this is very interesting. So I'm so happy you're coming to our country. So,
Absolutely.
Sean, as you know, this being Concordia, we have people from all over sectors, private sector, public sector, NGO, advocacy groups. So before we move to questions, is there a call of action or message you wish to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, there is. This is an agency that thrives on partnership and thrives on looking for ways to engage the private sector. We're trying to build a sustainable economy and help our partner countries do so. We're not going to be able to do it with government funds alone. The only way, in my view, to do that sustainably long term is to create the environment for private capital to invest. And so we are looking for partners actively, and we're frankly looking for people to spread the message of what MCC does, how we go about doing it, and the results we've had. And we are consistently marked the most transparent agency in foreign assistance, in many respects, the most transparent agency in government. Our procurements, our projects, they're online, they're available, they're all assessed. Our projects are monitored and evaluated publicly and independently for 20 years after completion. So they're monitored and evaluated for longer than the agency's been in existence. And I think it's and that goes to the sustainability part and the commitment that we bring in the model that we operate. So that would be my ask to help us get the word out.
Yeah, I'm so much really excited because we need MCC now more than before. As you see the growth and urbanization in Africa, you know, when the countries grow, we have more WASH issues. So I'm so excited. So thank you so much, Sean, for that.
Oh.
Back to you, Anna.
Great. Thank you so much, Sean and Kennedy. We will be opening up to questions in just a moment, so please be ready, put them in the chat feature, or be ready to kind of wave to the camera. You can unvideo mute yourself, I suppose, right now so that we can really see your faces and collaborate. Before we move to that, it's my pleasure to bring in Ambassador Dobriansky for some closing remarks. The technology side is failures on my side, just for everyone's reference. that was on me.
Whoop, there we go. I think you can hear me now, correct? Yes, great. Okay. I was just going to say, I think you were in charge, and so I could not touch anything. Anyhow, here I am. First, let me say my remarks are going to be brief because I know we want to go to questions. But first, Sean, I want to thank you for coming today. The Millennium Challenge Corporation is really a very important institution, the United States government. And you well articulated its mission, that it seeks to spawn economic growth at the same time to alleviate poverty. It builds institutions in developing countries, and it also addresses and tackles key health-related issues. And you gave us a really good feel for that, and particularly in this important area of WASH, water, sanitation, hygiene, which is so crucial at this time of the pandemic. I do want to also add something that you also referred to that I think is very important. Your institution collaborates with other countries. As you said rightly, it's a partnership. You work with the innovations, the ideas, the frameworks that are established by the countries you're interacting, and you grow them. And I think that's a very key component. So thank you for that, and thank you for your words today. And Kennedy, outstanding moderation. You really got a lot in a short amount of time. And just, it's been a real privilege that you could also join us as well today. We're very appreciative of that. So at this time, I am going to turn it over to Hannah. I believe that we go into a question mode. And so Hannah, over to you. And thank you both again, gentlemen. Thank you.